Mort by Terry Pratchett. This is the bright candlelit room where the lifetimers are stood, shelf upon shelf of them, squat hourglasses, one for every living person, pouring their fine sand from the future into the past. The accumulated hiss of the falling grains makes the room roar like the sea. This is the owner of the room, stalking through it with a preoccupied air. His name is Death, but not any death. This is the Death whose particular sphere of operations is, well, not a sphere at all, but the Discworld, which is flat and rides on the back of 4 giant elephants, who stand on the shells of the enormous star turtle Great Tatooine, which is bounded by a waterfall that cascades endlessly into space. Scientists have calculated that the chance of anything so patently absurd actually existing are millions to 1. The magicians have calculated that 1,000,000 to 1 chances crop up 9 times out of 10. Death clicks across the black and white tiled floor on toes of bone, muttering inside his cowl as his skeletal fingers count along the rows of busy hourglasses. Finally he finds one that seems to satisfy him, lifts it carefully from its shelf and carries it across to the nearest candle. He holds it so that the light glints off it, and stares at the little point of reflected brilliance. The steady gaze from those twinkling eye sockets encompasses the world turtle, scuttling through the deeps of space, carapace scarred by comets and pitted by meteors. One day even Great Tatooine will die, Death knows. Now that would be a challenge. But the focus of his gaze dives onwards towards the blue-green magnificence of the disk itself, turning slowly under its tiny orbiting sun. Now it curves away from the great mountain range called the Ramtops. The Ramtops are full of deep valleys and unexpected cracks and considerably more geography than they know what to do with. They have their own peculiar weather, full of shrapnel rain and whiplash winds and permanent thunderstorms. Some people say it's all because the Ramtops are the home of old wild magic. Mind you, some people will say anything. Death blinks, just for depth of vision. Now he sees the grassy country of the turn-wise slopes of the mountains. Now he sees a particular hillside. Now he sees a field. Now he sees a boy running. Now he watches. Now, in a voice like lead slabs being dropped on granite, he says, "Yes." There was no doubt there was something magical in the soil of that hilly, broken area, which, because of the strange tint that it gave to the local flora, was known as the Octarine grass country. For example, it was one of the few places on the disk where plants produced re-annual varieties. Re-annuals are plants that grow backwards in time. You sow the seed this year and they grow last year. Mort's family specialized in distilling the wine from re-annual grapes. These were very powerful and much sought after by fortune-tellers, since of course they enabled him to see the future. The only snag was that he got the hangover the morning before, and had to drink a lot to get over it. Re-annual growers tended to be big, serious men, much given to introspection and close examination of the calendar. A farmer who neglects to sow ordinary seed only loses the crop, whereas anyone who forgets to sow seeds of a crop that has already been harvested 12 months before risks disturbing the entire fabric of casualty, not to mention acute embarrassment. It was also acutely embarrassing to Mort's family that the youngest son was not at all serious, and had about the same talent for horticulture that you would find in a dead starfish. It wasn't that he was unhelpful, but he had the kind of vague, cheerful helpfulness that serious men soon learn to dread. There was something infectious, possibly even fatal about it. He was tall, red-haired and freckled, with the sort of body that seemed to be only marginally under its owner's control. It apparently had been built out of knees. On this particular day it was hurtling across the high fields, waving its hands and yelling. Mort's father and uncle watched it disconsolately from the stone wall. "What I don't understand," said Father Lezek, "is that the birds don't even fly away. I'd fly away if I saw it coming toward me." "Ah, the human body's a wonderful thing. I mean, his legs go all over the place, but there's a fair turn of speed there." Mort reached the end of a furrow. An overfull wood pigeon lurched slowly out of his way. "His heart's in the right place, mind," said Lezek carefully. "Ah, of course, 'tis the rest of him that isn't." "He's clean about the house, doesn't eat much," said Lezek. "No, I can see that." Lezek looked sideways at his brother, who was staring fixedly at the sky. "I heard you got a place going up at your farm, Hamish," he said. "Ah, got an apprentice in, didn't I?" "Ah," said Lezek gloomily. "When was that, then?" "Yesterday," said his brother, lying with rattlesnake speed. "I'll sign and seal. Sorry. Look, I got nothing against young Mort, see? He's as nice a boy as you could wish to meet. It's just that." I know, said Lezek. He couldn't find his arse with both hands. They stared at the distant figure. It had fallen over. Some pigeons had waddled over to inspect it. "He's not stupid, mind," said Hamish. "Not what you call stupid." "Well, has a brain, all right," Lezek conceded. "Sometimes he starts thinking so hard you have to hit him around the head to get his attention. His granny taught him to read, see? I reckon it overheated his mind. Mort had got up and tripped over his rope. You ought to set him to a trade, said Hamish, reflectively. Priests do it, maybe. Wizardry. They do a lot of reading, wizards. They looked at each other. Into both their minds stole an inkling of what Mort might be capable of if he got his well-meaning hand on a book of magic. All right, said Hamish hurriedly. Something else, then. There'll be lots of things he could turn his hand to. He starts thinking too much, that's the trouble, said Lesek. Look at him just now. You don't think about how to scare birds, you just do it. A normal boy, I mean. Hamish scratched his chin thoughtfully. Could be someone else's problem, he said. Lesek's expression did not alter, but there was a subtle change around his eyes. What do you mean? He said. There's a hiring fair at Sheepridge next week. You set him as apprentice, see, and his new master will have the job of knocking him into shape. 'Tis the law. Get him indentured and 'tis binding. Lesek looked across the field at his son, who was examining a rock. I wouldn't want anything to happen to him, mind, he said doubtfully. We're quite fond of him, his mother and me. You get used to people. It'd be for his own good, you'll see. Make a man of him. Oh well, certainly plenty of raw material, sighed Lesek. Mort was getting interested in the rock. It had curly shells in it, relics of the early days of the world, when the Creator had made things out of stone, no one knew why. Mort was interested in a lot of things. Why people's teeth fitted together so neatly, for example. He'd given that one a lot of thought. Then there was the puzzle of why the sun came out during the day instead of at night when the light would come in, very useful. He knew the standard explanation, which somehow didn't feel very satisfying. In short, Mort was one of those people who were more dangerous than a bag full of rattlesnakes. He was determined to discover the underlying logic behind the universe. Which was going to be hard, because there wasn't one. The Creator had a lot of remarkably good ideas when he put the world together, but making it understandable hadn't been one of them. Tragic heroes always moan when the gods take an interest in them, but it's the people the gods ignore who get the really tough deals. His father was yelling at him, as usual. Mort threw the rock at the pigeon, which was almost too full to lurch out of the way, and wandered back across the field. And that was why Mort and his father walked down through the mountains into Sheepridge on Hogswatch Eve, with Mort's rather sparse possessions in a sack on his back of a donkey. The town wasn't much more than 4 sides to a cobbled square, lined with shops that provided all the service industry of the farming community. After 5 minutes, Mort came out of the tailor's, wearing a loose-fitting brown garment of imprecise function, which had been understandably unclaimed by a previous owner, and had plenty of room for him to grow, on the assumption that he would grow into a 19-legged elephant. His father regarded him critically. Very nice, he said, for the money. It itches, said Mort. I think there's things in here with me. There's thousands of lads in the world will be very thankful for a nice warm... Lezek paused and gave up. Garment like that, my lad. I could share it with them, Mort said hopefully. You've got to look smart, said Lezek severely. You've got to make an impression and stand out in the crowd. There was no doubt about it. He would. They set out among the throng crowding the square, each listening to his own thoughts. Usually Mort enjoyed visiting the town, with its cosmopolitan atmosphere and strange dialects from villages as far away as 5, even 10 miles. But this time he felt unpleasantly apprehensive, as if he could remember something that hadn't happened yet. The fair seemed to work like this. Men looking for work stood in ragged lines in the centre of the square. Many of them sported little symbols on their hats to tell the world the kind of work they were trained in. Shepherds wore a wisp of wool, carters a hank of horsehair, interior decorators a strip of rather interesting Hessian wall coverings, and so on. The boys seeking apprenticeship were clustered on the hub side of the square. You just go and stand there, and someone comes and offers you an apprenticeship, said Lezek, his voice trimmed with uncertainty. If they like the look of you, that is. How did they do that? Said Mort. Well, said Lezek, and paused. Hamish hadn't explained about this bit. He drew on his limited knowledge of the marketplace, which was restricted to livestock sales, and ventured, I suppose they count your teeth and that. Make sure you don't wheeze and your feet are all right. I shouldn't let on about the reading, it unsettles people. And then what? Said Mort. Then you go and learn a trade, said Lezek. What trade in particular? Well, carpentry's a good one, Lezek hazarded. Or thievery, someone's got to do it. Mort looked at his feet. He was a dutiful son when he remembered. If being an apprentice was what was expected of him, then he was determined to be a good one. Carpentry didn't sound very promising, though. Wood had a stubborn life of its own and a tendency to split. And official thieves were rare in the Ramtops, but people weren't rich enough to afford them. All right, he said eventually. I'll go and give it a try. But what happens if I don't get apprenticed? Lezek scratched his head. I don't know, he said. I expect you just wait until the end of the fair. At midnight, I suppose. And now midnight approached. A light frost began to crisp the cobblestones. In the ornamental clock tower that overlooked the square, a couple of delicately carved little automatons whirred out of trapdoors in the clock face and struck the quarter hour. 15 minutes to midnight. Mort shivered, but the crimson fires of shame and stubbornness flared up inside him, hotter than the slopes of hell. He blew on his fingers for something to do and stared up at the freezing sky, trying to avoid the stares of the few stragglers among what remained of the fair. Most of the stall-keepers had packed up and gone. Even the hot meat pie man had stopped crying his wares and, with no regard for personal safety, was eating one. The last of Mort's fellow hopefuls had vanished hours ago. He was a wall-eyed young man with a stoop and a running nose, and Sheebridge's only licensed beggar had pronounced him to be ideal material. The lad on the other side of Mort had gone off to be a toy-maker. One by one they had trooped off, the masons, the ferriers, the assassins, the mercers, coopers, hoodwinkers, and ploughmen. In a few minutes it would be the new year, and hundreds of boys would be starting out hopefully on their careers. New, worthwhile lives of useful surfers rolling out in front of them. Mort wondered miserably why he hadn't been picked. He tried to look respectable, and had looked all prospective masters squarely in the eye to impress them with his excellent natures and extremely likeable qualities. This didn't seem to have the right effect. "Would you like a hot meat pie?" said his father. "No." "He's selling them cheap." "No, thank you." "Oh." Lizek hesitated. "I could ask the man if he wants an apprentice," he said helpfully. "Very reliable, the catering trade." "I don't think he does," said Mort. "Probably not," said Lizek. "Bit of a one-man business, I expect. It's gone now, anyway. Tell you what, I'll save you a bit of mine." "I don't actually feel very hungry, Dad." "It's hardly any gristle." "No, but thanks all the same." "Oh." Lizek deflated a little. He danced about a bit to stamp some life back into his feet, and whistled a few tuneless bars between his teeth. He felt he ought to say something, to offer some kind of advice, to point out that life had its ups and downs, to put his arm around his son's shoulder and talk expensively about the world's problems growing up, to indicate, in short, that the world is a funny old place, where no one should ever, metaphorically speaking, be so proud as to turn down the offer of a perfectly good hot meat pie. They were alone now. The frost, the last one of the year, tightened its grip on the stones. High in the tower above them, a cocked wheel went clonk, tripped a lever, released a ratchet, and let a heavy lead weight drop down. There was a dreadful metallic wheezing noise, and the trapdoors in the clock face slid open, releasing the clockwork men. Swinging their hammers jerkily, as if they were afflicted with robotic arthritis, they began to ring in the new day. "Well, that's it," said Lizek hopefully. "They'd have to find somewhere to sleep. Hog's Watch night was no time to be walking in the mountains. Perhaps there was a stable somewhere." "It's not midnight until the last stroke," said Mort distantly. Lizek shrugged. The sheer strength of Mort's obstinacy was defeating him. "All right," he said. "We'll wait, then." And then they heard the clip-clop of hooves, which boomed rather more loudly around the chilly square than common acoustics really should allow. In fact, clip-clop was an astonishingly inaccurate word for the kind of noise which rattled around Mort's head. Clip-clop suggested a rather jolly little pony, quite possibly wearing a straw hat with holes cut out for its ears. An edge to this sound made it very clear that straw hats weren't an option. The horse entered the square by the hub road, steam curling off its huge damp white flanks and sparks striking up from the cobbles beneath it. It trotted proudly like a war charger. It was definitely not wearing a straw hat. The tall figure on its back was wrapped up against the cold. When the horse reached around the center of the square, the rider dismounted, slowly, and fumbled with something behind the saddle. Eventually he, or she, produced a nosebag, fastened it over the horse's ears, and gave it a friendly pat on the neck. The air took on a thick, greasy feel, and the deep shadows around Mort became edged with blue and purple rainbows. The rider strode towards him, black cloak billowing and feet making little clicking sounds on the cobbles. They were only noises. Silence clamped down on the square like great drifts of cotton wool. The impressive effect was rather spoiled by a patch of ice. "Oh, bugger." It wasn't exactly a voice. The words were there all right, but they arrived in Mort's head without bothering to pass through his ears. He rushed forward to help the fallen figure, and found himself grabbing hold of a hand that was nothing more than polished bone, smooth and rather yellow, like an old billiard ball. The figure's hood fell back, and a naked skull turned its empty eye sockets toward him. Not quite empty, though. Deep within them, as though they were windows looking across the gulfs of space, were two tiny blue stars. It occurred to Mort that he ought to feel horrified, so he was slightly shocked to find that he wasn't. It was a skeleton sitting in front of him, rubbing its knees and grumbling. It was a live one, curiously impressive, but not, for some strange reason, very frightening. "Thank you, boy," said the skull. "What is your name?" Said Mort. "Mortimer, sir. They call me Mort." "What a coincidence," said the skull. "Help me up, please." The figure rose unsteadily, brushing itself down. Now Mort could see there was a heavy belt around its waist, from which was slung a white-handled sword. "I hope you are not hurt, sir," he said politely. The skull grinned. Of course, Mort thought it hadn't much of a choice. "No harm done, I am sure." The skull looked around and seemed to see Lezek, who appeared to be frozen to the spot for the first time. Mort thought an explanation was called for. "My father," he said, trying to move protectively in front of Exhibit A without causing any offence. "Excuse me, sir. Are you at Death?" "Correct. Full marks for observations, that boy." Mort swallowed. "My father's a good man," he said. He thought for a while, then added, "Quite good. I'd rather you left him alone, if it's all the same to you. I don't know what you have done to him, but I'd like you to stop it. No offence meant." Death stepped back, his skull on one side. "I have merely put us outside time for a moment," he said. "He will see and hear nothing that disturbs him. Oh boy, it was you that I came for." "Me? You are here seeking employment." Light dawned on Mort. "You're looking for an apprentice," he said. The eye sockets turned towards him, their actinic pinpoints flaring. "Of course." Death waved a bony hand. There was a wash of purple light, a sort of visible pop, and Lezek unfroze. Above his head the clockwork automatons got on with the job of proclaiming midnight, as time was allowed to come creeping back. Lezek blinked. "Didn't see you there for a minute," he said. "Sorry, mine must have been elsewhere." "I was offering your boy a position," said Death. "I trust that meets with your approval." "What was your job again?" said Lezek, talking to a black-robed skeleton without showing even a flicker of surprise. "I usher souls into the next world," said Death. "Ah," said Lezek, "of course, should have guessed from the clothes. Very necessary work, very steady, established business." "I have been going for some time, yes," said Death. "Good, good. Never really thought of it as a job for Mort, but it's good work, always very reliable. What's your name?" "Death." "Dad," said Mort urgently. "Can't say I recognize the firm," said Lezek. "Where are you based exactly?" "From the uttermost depth of the sea to the heights where even the eagle may not go," said Death. "It's fair enough," nodded Lezek. "Well, Dad," said Mort, pulling at his father's coat. Death laid a hand on Mort's shoulder. "What your father sees and hears is not what you see and hear," he said. "Do not worry him. Do you think he would want to see me, in the flesh, as it were?" "But you're Death," said Mort. "You go around killing people." "I kill?" said Death, obviously offended. "Certainly not. People get killed, but that's their business. I just take them from then on. For all, it'd be a bloody stupid world if people got killed without dying, wouldn't it?" "Well, yes," said Mort doubtfully. Mort had never heard the word intrigued. It was not in regular use in the family vocabulary, but a spark in his soul told him there was something weird and fascinating and not entirely horrible, that if he let this moment go, he spent the rest of his life regretting it. He remembered the humiliations of the day and the long walk back home. He began. "I don't have to die to get the job, do I? Being dead is not compulsory. And the bones? Not if you don't want to." Mort breathed out again. It had been starting to prey on his mind. "If father says it's all right," he said. They looked at Lezek, who was scratching his beard. "How do you feel about this, Mort?" he said, with the brittle brightness of a fever victim. "It's not everyone's idea of an occupation. It's not what I had in mind, I admit. But they do say undertaking is an honoured profession. It's your choice." "Undertaking?" said Mort. Death nodded and raised his finger to his lips in a conspiratorial gesture. "It's interesting," said Mort slowly. "I think I'd like to try it." "Where did you say your business was?" said Lezek. "Is it far?" "No further than the thickness of a shadow," said Death. "Where the first primal call was, there was I also. Where man was, there am I. When the last life crawls on the freezing stars, there will I be." "Ah," said Lezek. "You get about a bit, then?" He looked puzzled, like a man struggling to remember something important, then obviously gave up. Death patted him on the shoulder in a friendly fashion and turned to Mort. "Have you any possessions, boy?" "Yes," said Mort, and then he remembered. "Only I think I left them in the shop. Dad, we left a sack of clothes shop." "It'll be shut," said Lezek. "Shops aren't open on Hog's Watch Day. You have to go back the day after tomorrow. Well, tomorrow now." "It is of little account," said Death. "We will leave now. No doubt I will have business here soon enough." I hope you'll be able to drop in and see us soon, said Lizek. He seemed to be struggling with his thoughts. Not sure if that's a good idea, said Mort. Well, goodbye, lad, said Lizek. You ought to do what you're told, you understand? And, excuse me, sir, do you have a son? Death looked rather taken aback. No, he said. I have no sons. I'll just have a last word with my boy, if you have no objection. Then I will go see to the horse, said Death, with more than normal tact. Lizek put his arm around his son's shoulders, with some difficulty in view of their difference in height, and gently propelled him across the square. Maud, you know your Uncle Hamish told me about this printing business, he whispered. Yes. Well, he told me something else, the old man confided. He said it is not unknown for an apprentice to inherit his master's business. What do you think of that, then? I'm not sure, said Mort. It's worth thinking about, said Lizek. I am thinking about it, father. Many a young lad has started out that way, Hamish said. He makes himself useful, earns his master's confidence, and, well, if there's any daughters in the house... Did Mr. say anything about daughters? Mr. who? Said Mort. Mr. your new master. Oh, him? No, I don't think so, said Mort slowly. I don't think he's the marrying type. Many a keen young man owes his advancements to his nuptials, said Lizek. He does? Maud, I don't think you're really listening. What? Lizek came to a halt on the frosty cobbles and spun the boy around to face him. You're really going to have to do better than this, he said. Don't you understand, boy? If you're going to amount to anything in this world, then you've got to listen. I'm your father telling you these things. Mort looked down at his father's face. He wanted to say a lot of things. He wanted to say how much he loved him, how worried he was. He wanted to ask what his father really thought he'd just seen and heard. He wanted to say that he felt as though he stepped on a molehill and found that it was really a volcano. He wanted to ask what nuptials are. What he actually said was, Yes, thank you. It'd be better going. I'll try to write you a letter. There's bound to be someone passing by who can read it to us, said Lizek. Goodbye, Mort. He blew his nose. Goodbye, Dad. I'll come to visit, said Mort. Death coughed tactfully, although it sounded like the pistol crack of an ancient beam full of death-watched beetle. We had better be going, he said. Hop up, Mort. As Mort scrambled behind the ornate silver saddle, Death leaned down and shook Lizek's hand. Thank you, he said. He's a good lad at heart, said Lizek. Bit dreamy, that's all. Suppose we were all young once? Death considered this. No, he said. I don't think so. He gathered up the reins and turned the horse towards the rim road. From his perch behind the black-robed figure, Maud waved desperately. Lizek waved back. Then, as the horse and its two riders disappeared from view, he lowered his hand and looked at it. The handshake, it had felt strange, but somehow he couldn't exactly remember why.